all these hard skills that I've learned over these years, AI comes in, it's like, did I just waste all that time?
This is Matt Workman, a DP with a long history on the internet. He built Cinematography Database and Cine Tracer. Now he's entered a new chapter of filmmaking, AI at Fall. In this episode, we'll dive into why he went all in on AI and a whole bunch more.
And I went like all in on content about generative AI, and it made like a lot of waves, and Fall saw it, and we started talking. There is a massive talent shortage in generative AI, and they're hiring like crazy right now. I love film cameras, but this is a new form of it.
From VP Land at AI on the Lot. This is inside the AI studio.
Matt.
Dude, good to meet you in person.
Finally see you in person. Been internet friends for a long time.
Someone said this to me, you look just like you do in the videos.
I guess that's
Is it a compliment? We don't know. We don't know.
People not familiar with you, how would you even explain what it is you do in your internet history?
Okay, I'm gonna try to like really show. It's like cinematographer, this was an era, virtual production, today generative AI.
Yeah.
I think that's the shortest way to say it.
But you're also on the web. You started Cinematography Database, and that was like one of the early kind of web for just talking about cinematography online, and you also built those Unreal, the previs tools.
Yeah, so my real passion for like a long time was to try to bring like cinematography, like traditional cinematography, and any digital world together. And that ended up, having a name was like Previs. Long story short, Epic Games, who makes Unreal Engine, reached out to me at a certain point, and they were making their kind of thrust into the film industry, and they were like, hey, we love what you do with 3D stuff and cinematography. We really need someone who knows cinematography. And so they gave me like a lot of resources to help kind of play around, and I built Cine Tracer in like a month. I think I live streamed the whole thing on Twitch. The beginning of it.
Yeah.
And it was like, just fun exploration. And then I just kept building, and I was like, how much of the real world can I put into a video game? And that was the driving question for like, I think 8 years. I did it for quite a while. Never like full time, pretty diligently. I wish I could look it up on my phone. Someone told me that like a big movie just had an interview, and the director's, I think it's Obsession. Is that a familiar film for you? Yeah, I believe the director, a bunch of people in messaging said that the director did an interview, and they were like, yeah, we previewed the whole thing in Cine Tracer.
That's cool. I remember a few years ago, I think it was Movie Maker magazine, a friend of mine did a film and mentioned Cine Tracer, that they like prevised the whole thing there.
Yeah, it went much bigger than I ever expected. It was really just like a fun project. I was like, somewhat unprecedented. I think like FrameForge and previs apps existed, but it was never like, this is world domination we're making. I was like, what is it possible? What happens, Like, one of the big things was like Unreal Engine had RTX coming out. If we go dig all the way back to when that was like the cutting edge, right? It was like real-time ray tracing. I was just like, what's that look like? That's really cool, And so I still pretty much follow that same line of thought as like, how can we combine, cinematography with new technology to make images? These days, there's a new way.
Yeah. How did this lead into your new foray into AI?
If you asked me a year ago to come to this conference, I would have said no. And the early innovators, I think, who were talking about it, like Corridor Digital was pretty early, talking about AI and stuff like that, poo-pooed it publicly. I was like, no. This is not real. This is not cinematography. But shows like yours, honestly, were one of the, like seeing like serious people talk about it and showing it, in a useful way. You and Addy, which conference has been great. We got to meet him and you, so it's like, I'm done. Very happy. Enough professionals were testing it, and then it was really Nano Banana Pro, VO3. Into Kling, and then C-Dance being, I was like, I just think realistically, I used to shoot commercials like, e-com type commercials, and they paid well. Big crews, 8-hour days, very shorter days than these guys have, maybe. Like really great, but realistically, it's a little bit generic, some of that stuff. And I started to see, I was like, this stuff we're generating, I was like, this is good. I could see this being a big part of production, and I basically made the decision to go like all in on it. And there were a couple things that happened along the way to kind of trigger that. One of them was, as I was starting to get into generative AI, there's this interview on Instagram, or it was somewhere, and it was posted on Instagram, and it was Roger Deakins at a film festival. Someone asked him about AI, and an AI bot just reposted this on my Twitter, because I talked about it today, but they were like, I think the quote roughly is that like, he's like, I don't care if you use AI, if it's a way for you to tell your story, completely paraphrased. And then just people were like, this guy's washed. What does he know? He's already made his millions. It's like, what do you know about cinematography? And just seeing kind of people just tear down, basically Roger Deakins. I was like, okay, guys, like really? And we're seeing it today with, Amazon's announcement of a major, I wasn't that familiar with his animation work, but a major 2D animator came out that he's going to be producing a generative AI animation film with Amazon, like beloved 2 days ago, the most beloved like animator and like, one of them. And then today, if you go on X and you look at his account, he's like death threats to his family. He's like, please stop sending death threats to my family. You can talk to me about it. Open DMs, like I'm happy to talk to you about this process, and it's total revolt. So when I started seeing that stuff, to me, sort of was like an evangelizing moment to me. And I went like all in on AI. And I kind of just like blinded it all out. And I was like, what would it look like if me, as a creator, fully accepted generative AI? Being like, just go to the end game. What is the end game of this? Pretend I'm there, act that way. And I started producing content with that mindset, talking with that mindset, and that got me interviews with Amazon, another A company, which I won't name the name of exactly, and then Fall. And we were having a lot of conversations because the narrative around AI is a little muddy, not the cleanest, I wouldn't say, coming out. So, having someone that comes from film, comes from VFX, to be able to kind of help talk about that is my job, I think, at this point.
Did you feel like there's an aha moment between Nano Banana and VO where you're like, oh, these models can actually like understand cinematography, or they're getting in that direction where like this is another form of cinematography?
Yeah, I mean, to call it cinematography is...
Or you can understand the lingo.
It makes good-looking images, certainly. Dare we use the H word on this podcast, the Higgs field H word? I know there's controversy around it. But, similar to when I was dabbling with real-time graphics, Unreal Engine and Epic Games directly reached out to me. They were like, come here, here's the thing, do this thing, resources, help, right? And that was a huge part of what I did for a long time. Like, I think within the first week of me even saying the word generative AI, Higgsfield just pulled me right out. They were like, credits, do this thing, here's our new tool. Back then it had like the lenses and the very much a UI that I would have built like for Cine Tracer, that sort of thing. They had built, and I was like, okay, this is intriguing, I'll at least test it. And honestly, I was so new to it back then. I was like, there's the anamorphic flares. I've tried so hard to get anamorphic flares in my work. It's hard to convince a client to do anamorphic. I know anamorphic lenses are like easy now, but when I was a DP, you're not getting anamorphics if you don't live in California. Like almost impossible. Like even in New York City. Like I had connections to Panavision and stuff like that, so they had to fly them in to bring them in. Like New York, we didn't have them. Now you have them. Anyway, so I've just always liked anamorphic flares, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like at that moment, I was like, this is what I do for a living. But I was like, that's a nice anamorphic image, And I'm not coming from that perspective, comparing it to live action, because in that point I was like full Unreal Engine. I'm comparing it to like, what can I do in Unreal Engine? I had those flares, I had metahumans, I was in like kind of my mocap era. Wasn't that long ago. And I was like, as blasphemous as it is, I was like, we wrote these couple words in there, moved a little, UI around. It was like, give me the Panavision C-series flares, and it looked pretty good. And I was like, looks very convincing because it's, Gen AI is like a very realistic-looking human, has like a nice-looking flare. And I was like, this is fun at least. It's cool.
If you found that this was the path of another form of cinematography.
Yeah. So if you talk to my wife or like people that were close to me, and perhaps even we talked about this sort of thing, it was a real like mental hurdle. All the things that live action cinematographers are going through, animators, anyone who's like feels existentially threatened by this, I went through that too. I think I want to make this point, I'm going to make this video at one point. It's like I like film cameras more than almost anyone in the world. And I have the proof of it, and I'd like to see anyone try to refute me of it. Like I like this stuff. Like my dream would still be to own all of the ARRI cameras in my house, the whole series. If Panavision ever, I'm going there and I'm stealing those cameras and I'm putting them in my house. Like I love film cameras. But this is a new form of it. And if you remove the synthesis, the tooling of how it was made, and you just jump to the end product, it's pretty good. And it's like, if you remove how it got made from like, I have an idea of a shot, here's the image, and you don't think about what's in the middle, with AI, you can end up with the image that you want, some form of it. I think it is a new form, but it still hurts me to say it. I have the traditionalist, but the more kind of business-minded and I think sort of realist with this space, I think that, yeah, it is a form of cinematography. You just forget what's in the middle part. We don't know how you made it. You want a shot of two people and you want it to look a certain way. You can direct the lighting to some degree. It's like, you can get there. You can get that end image. So, I think in that definition, it is a new type of cinematography.
Is there also like the realistic aspect of you where it's like, if I want to get stuff made, you're not going to be able to buy every single ARRI camera and shoot on film?
Yeah, I would love to shoot film still. Like that would have been my goal. Like Max Goldman, like all the New York DPs I came up kind of like under, they're all shot film. They were like, if you're not shooting 35 and doing like full color grades, like 2K color grades back then was like a big deal. Don't touch these digital cameras, they would tell me, So that's still my mindset. And if I want to impress my elder cinematographers, I'm like, oh, we have to be shooting film or else they don't think I'm cool. So I still have that mindset, but realistically, what labs are open? I love Kodak. I shot a Kodak commercial. I think I shot one of the last Kodak commercials for Kodak. Graded it at Eastman Kodak. I went to school in Rochester. We filmed it, we color graded it on the Da Vinci at the Kodak building. Like, I know Kodak, I know the IMAX people. But yeah, realistically, even if the film showed up here, I could find someone that could load it. Where am I processing this? Where are we realistically going to process like a little order of film, right? I mean, maybe the big movies can still do this. Some TV shows maybe own the 416s, but where are we processing this realistically? My crew hasn't loaded film in a long time. What do we do? You know, it's very impractical, yeah.
What walk me through kind of the pathway that led you to Fall?
Yeah, so I was very angry, kind of off the Deacons thing. Off of just talking about it ever at all, made people knee-jerk react very, how to say this, predictably now, I suppose, because I deal with it every day, but very, I'll just say angry. Perhaps given my background and what I've made and the content I've made, think that I perhaps like represent cinematography. So it's certainly seen as like a betrayal is a word, backstabbed is a word, to this day, the post I made today, I'm sure that's on there all over it, But given all of that, like there's still interest, though. It's still something new. To elicit that reaction at all is still interesting. Good. I'd rather the happier version of it. That would be nice. Even through that sort of negative energy, if we wanted to call it that, it was still energy. There's still something new happening. Something is important, I think, to elicit that type of energy in general. So in a way, a lot of that fueled me, and I have just kind of learned to kind of channel that into social media. I talk a lot, and so in the face of AI, right, generative AI, I look at my last 5 years. I have been building games by hand. This is I love film cameras more than anyone else in the world. I researched the ARRI SR3. I 3D modeled the magazine very accurately, both sides, the take, the in-feed, the take-in. There's Instagram posts of it, making an Unreal Engine, load the film magazine type of game. It's very detailed. I'm pretty sure no one's ever made it as detailed as I'm making it. And all these skills, right? All these hard skills, but in the face of generative AI, with that project, I was like, I can't quite make the game, but I can make a lot of those visuals with a text prompt, with an image, to some degree, and not interactive, but the linear version of it. So all these hard skills that I've learned over these years, AI comes in, it's like, are those worthless? Did I just waste all that time learning all this technical skills? Same with cinematography. Any craft is threatened and thinks about this. Programmers right now are why am I coding? No, right? So there was a turning point with me where I had to look and look strategically. I was like, my skills to be able to make this thing, to be able to film this way, to light this way, that may not be what my value is anymore. And I think that's what a lot of us technicians look at. It's like, I can light better than other people. I know these things. But when AI can just generate it, the value proposition is different. There's still taste to choose it. So at one point, I strategically chose that. I've had people say this to me. I was like, I think possibly my value as a human in the world of generative AI is to just talk, is to present concepts, is to talk with other people, network like I'm doing here. And I really dug into that. And I just made content like a madman like you, not as much as you actually. You produce a lot.
I feel like you've been churning stuff out.
Yeah, you're killing it. And I went all in on content about generative AI, and it made a lot of waves. And Fall saw it, and we started talking. I was talking to a bunch of companies, and at that point, I was just almost role playing full generative AI. And there's nothing more full generative AI than Fall. They said the intersection of the funnel of all generative AI, in my opinion, to media entertainment. And I was like, it's an incredible opportunity. And on top of that, unlike certain companies that I would work for, where you don't hear those employees talk too much ever, part of the deal with Fall is that I'm allowed to and sort of encouraged to, within reason, we don't want to make anybody too angry, but to continue this sort of personal campaign I have of just seeing how far generative AI can go. So I use today my personal platforms are part of my job. So it's kind of and you're seeing that a little bit more with certain tech companies. You'll see, not to compare myself for Fall like Sam Altman, but you'll see a lot of these new tech companies, new media, the employees are just out there tweeting. They'll be the PMs for OpenAI and Claude Code. He's out there responding to tweets.
Yeah.
People being like, Claude Code's ass, what is this? He's like, oh, I'm sorry, tell me why, so.
But you're saying you're free to post stuff if you test out models and it's some models just don't perform well.
Well, we don't, I don't necessarily say, I wouldn't say that so much, but.
At certain scenarios, I feel a lot of models are good. It just also depends, there's no best model because it's always what are you trying to do? And what are you trying to make? Different models are good at different things.
That is true. I've been, for me, I always I'm let me test a new image model, let me test a new video model. It's I want to make it look like traditional cinematography. That's my go-to. Not all of them can do that. So I've been stretching out into more making it look stylized animation, and that's really not my thing normally. But for this job, I need to be a little bit more flexible because illustration is a very valid form of content. And as you see with Amazon and trying to get production ready generative AI, 2026, that'll be animation. That'll be stylized 2D, stylized 3D. Photoreal, maybe not maybe not today.
What advice would you give to kind of more of the traditional technicians in the film industry when it comes to AI?
Yeah, so today I made a post saying that I'm here. It was the first on Instagram where I've been like, I work in generative AI. I think a lot of people knew that. I just wasn't on Instagram that much, but I made a post and I was like, all the reasons I know you hate it. I know, I'm here, I'm talking with DPs. I've talked to DPs out here. Like directors I used to work with, they're here. VFX companies, animation companies, like it's like we're all doing it like right now. I wrote that and I was like, if you're interested in this space, I was like, add me on LinkedIn. And so I've been just like talking to people. I connected to someone with Addy. Yeah. Sorry, Addy, sorry, man. I was like, and I'm just like talking to people, like kind of like one-on-one. And it's like, not to blow anyone up, but there's like the highest up like concept artists who are like, not working too much. And they're like, I can't possibly ever say the word AI or else you're Jorge, what's happening on Twitter. You'd just be burned alive by your whole community, kicked out the guild, right? Like probably, I don't know. But like, I just kind of take it one by one. And I talk to like DPs, like I know DPs pretty well. Maybe not the newest ones, but like the DPs my age, man, like they all know me. I know all these guys. And we're talking. A lot of them are very tech forward. A lot of them are building tools with Fall, not to plug Fall, but like if you want to build like, kind of next generation storyboarding or previs, or it's the final pixel. It's kind of up to you what you want to do. I mean, Fall is basically where everyone's doing it. So I pretty much talk to people one-on-one, and it's very particular. But I'm pretty sensitive to like people's content. I can tell pretty quickly from your profile and what you've worked on, like where likely you fall, where your friends are falling, like and where you might fit in. Because like right now, they are hiring. The video for AI I'm going to make is that there is a massive talent shortage in generative AI, and they're hiring like crazy right now. I mean, I'm one of the newest. And they're looking. And one of the requirements is you need to have worked in film production. You need to know pipelines from animation studios because that's what they're building for. So I kind of take people one-on-one, and it's like everyone's background's like very varied. And it's hard to say like, when are you ready to just go, torched earth and be like, hi, Instagram, I use generative AI, and you're ready for this. Well, slowly come out and do it. I could probably say his name. There's a well-known director that just recently did this. The reaction was what you would expect. I immediately DM'd them, immediately call with Fall. And it's like, the conversation is that he runs a studio, he has employees, cinematographers, those people getting paid, health insurance, etc. His wife works there. This is a hint. And he's like, realistically, I can't not at least learn what this is. It's irresponsible as a studio owner that what if some part of this makes another studio more competitive than us, which it will. He has to learn it, right? But that's a tough decision. It's more and more straightforward for someone that has employees, can get the benefit from it. I certainly understand it from an individual contributor, which is a software word, but in a film set context, a grip, an AC. But the same way that like a film loader is perhaps less relevant today than some position that may or may not be as, abundant in the future because of this, I understand that.
Matt, we're out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much.
Pleasure.
I appreciate it. It was awesome.